Normally, I like to nerd out about one running shoe at a time, but every once in a while, it's useful to zoom out and take a look at a brand as a whole. This is Hoka Running Spring 2026. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm an non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the Hoka running lineup as of spring 2026. But before I give my thoughts on these shoes, I do want to go over some disclosures. Most of these shoes were provided to me for the purpose of review, so I didn't have to pay for them. One of them I did by myself, but no one is paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with the disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Hoka running lineup. And whenever I start with a running brand, I always like to start with the daily trainer. And from Hoka, that is the Clfton. This is Clfton version 10, and this is the shoe that, at least from the roadside, put Clfton on the map. It's the kind of shoe that you would use for most of your run for most of your days. Typically, this shoe has been characterized by a tall stack height, but a low heel drop, and then a rocker up front to help you manage all of that stack height and foam. And it results in a ride that is comfy and chill. And a lot of years, especially with the Clfton 10 this year, the ride ends up being a little bit on the slightly stabilized side. And so this one isn't my favorite Clfton, but when it comes to the daily trainers, the Clfton is it from Hoka. If you need more cushion than this, then Hoka has the Bondi. And this is another one of those shoes that was instrumental in really helping Hoka create its identity. It's an even taller stack height shoe, and it's, as far as I remember, one of the first max cushion stack height shoes, and it was kind of unapologetically big at a time where everything was going low stack height and minimalistic. This version number 9, I think, is a fantastic update, and it has both a lot of cushion, but it also has a little bit of bounciness, so it doesn't feel like a shoe that's either tall for the sake of being tall, or it doesn't feel like a shoe that's tall and a little bit too mushy. I think they got it just right with the Bondi 9, and it's an excellent example of a max cushion shoe. Now, from a race perspective, Hoka has the Cielo X1 3.0. This is a shoe that uses upgraded racing materials. It's using PIBA on a top and bottom layer, and then there is a carbon fiber plate in the middle. The upper is stripped down and snug like you would want for a race, and everything is put together in a very lightweight package. This shoe is, I think, optimal for mid-foot strikers. Now, there's a space in between here that I typically always leave open, because there's usually a shoe in most brands lineup that's in between the daily trainer and the racing shoe, something that is faster than what you would use on your kind of everyday runs, but maybe not quite as aggressive as the racing shoe. Then Hoka used to have something in this spot, but I think it's kind of gone empty for a little while. I think the closest thing that they do have, though, is another daily trainer. They have two, and this is the Mach 7. This was recently updated, and this is a shoe that is in the daily trainer space. It's a kind of shoe that you can use for most of your runs, most of your days, but it has a very different kind of profile, and it's for a different set of preferences than for someone who's using the Clfton. This shoe is a lot lighter, a lot bouncier, and a little bit more on the speed-oriented side. So depending on what kind of experience you're looking for in that daily training space, you might go with the Clfton or you might go with the Mach 7. And for some people, they might end up using the Mach 7 as that tempo shoe because it does have some kind of speedier features built into it. Now, there's a whole bunch of other running shoes that Hoka makes, and the way that it kind of makes sense to me, even though I don't think Hoka necessarily co-signs on the way that I'm about to kind of split up their lineup, is I think that these are the shoes for neutral runners or people who want mostly neutral running experiences. In other words, stuff that isn't like motion controlled or doesn't have stability features built into it. And then I think that they have a side of shoes that I think is designed for people that are either wanting a little bit of motion control or maybe heel strikers and want just a little bit more stability as they're going from heel and pushing off onto their toe. So let's set these shoes over to the side. And what Hoka has done is, for each of these shoes, there is another shoe that sits across from it and serves the same function, but has a little bit more stability in them. Now, across from the daily trainer, and we'll start again with the daily trainer, Hoka has the Skyflow. And this is a shoe that has a very similar silhouette to the Clfton, and it has a lot of similar features as the Clfton. And you're supposed to use it very similar as the Clfton, But there is a little bit of motion control built into it in the way that they've kind of set up the geometry and architecture of this midsole. So it's a little bit more motion controlled. If you want like a full-on stability daily trainer, Hoka also has a whole other set of stability shoes. And once we get to like full-on stability, that's usually where I have to drop off because I can't really run in stability shoes. And even the Skyflow was a little bit of a challenge for me to run in because of those slight motion control features. But if you want like something that's even more stabilized than the Skyflow, then you would go to the Arahi. Now, on the Max Cushion side, there's another kind of slightly stabilized version of the Bondi that's available, and this is the Skyward X. And I think this is probably like the most controversial of kind of comparisons that I'm gonna make here, because I don't think that the Skyward X is exactly just a stabilized Bondi. I think that maybe oversimplifies it a bit. Because they're using some elevated materials that are in here, there is some carbon in here as well. I don't really want to call it a carbon plate, but there's carbon elements that prevent these squishy foams from getting too squishy. In other words, it's controlling some of the motion as the foot hits the ground. And it's a max cushion stack height shoe that is very comfortable. And so I would consider it as the slightly stabilized version as the Bondi, as a convenient, if not overly reductive, shorthand. And if you need more motion control than what the Skyward X provides, there is this stability max cushion shoe from Hoka, and that would be the Gaviota. Now, when it comes to the racing shoe, there is the Rocket X3. And again, this is another place where I think Hoka might be bristling a little bit at the way that I'm comparing these two shoes. But I think of these two shoes as basically the same caliber of shoe, but intended for different runners. Hoka thinks of it more as this is the racing shoe for kind of everyday runners, and this is the even more premium, expensive shoe for the like elite and sub-elite runners. But I think of these as this is the shoe that you get if you're a mid-foot, forefoot striker, and this is the shoe, the Rocket X3, that you get if you are a heel striker. And to kind of round out the lineup over here across from the Mach, we have the Mach X3. And again, it might be a little bit of an oversimplification to say that this is just a stabilized Mach, because they are using some race grade materials, at least on the top layer in this shoe. But they've got huge sidewalls on each side of the ankle in this shoe, and that carbon fiber plate is doing a lot more in terms of stabilizing or controlling the motion of the way that these foams compress, rather than they are kind of doing that springy thing that carbon fiber plates do. And so I find that people who are heel strikers love this shoe, and I find that people who want a slightly stabilized tempo shoe love the Mach X, and this is Mach X version 3. And so this is the way that I am looking at the Hoka lineup. Now, even though I have glossed over a lot of other shoes that are in the Hoka lineup, these are kind of the main ones that most people are going to have questions about. And from here, I do want to pare it down and start putting together a rotation of shoes. Not to say that everyone has to have a rotation of shoes. You don't have to have a closet full of running shoes to be a runner. And not to say that everyone has to use only shoes from one brand when you're putting together your shoe rotation, if you want to have a shoe rotation. But I think putting together some sample rotations might help make it a little bit easier to understand how these shoes interact or are related to each other. Now, I do not like motion control things, so that makes it easy for me to remove 4 of these shoes pretty much right off the bat. And so the 4 shoe rotation that I would use from Hoka would be using the Bondi as a max cushion shoe. On a day where I'm a little bit tired but don't really want to go full on max cushion, but want a little bit of structure in my daily trainer, then I might go with the Clfton. For most other daily training days, I would go with the Mach 7, and for my tough workouts and races, I would go with the Cielo X1 3.0. If I needed to reduce this down to a 3 shoe rotation, I think the Clfton 10 would be the shoe that I would get rid of. In other years, it might be the Bondi that I get rid of. Like last year's Clfton 9 I thought was fantastic. I much prefer the bounciness and the liveliness of that one. But because I don't like the Clfton 10, that one was an easy one for me to pare down and get to this 3 shoe rotation. Again, using the Bondi as my max cushion and easy run days. For my regular running days and something where I might have some pace changes in it, I go with the Mach, and then for workouts and racing, Cielo X1 3.0. Now, to get it down to a 2 shoe rotation gets a little bit tricky. And again, it would be a lot easier if I had the Clfton 9 in the lineup, last version of the Clfton, because then I would just get rid of both of these shoes and have the Clfton 9 and the Cielo X1 3.0. But because there isn't that Clfton 9 in the current lineup, it leads me to think that I might be tempted to get rid of the Mach 7, because the Mach 7, it was something that I was waiting for a long time. It took 2 years for them to update to this shoe, and it's pretty much the same as the Mach 6. And I feel like a lot has happened since the Mach 6 came out. And so this Mach 7 is a little bit underwhelming to me, and I'm tempted to get rid of it and run with just the Bondi and the Cielo X1 3.0. And this is kind of a awkward 2-shoe rotation because you've got a max cushion shoe and then a race day shoe as your only 2 options. But I think that's probably where I'd go, because then if I feel like if I had the Mach 7 and the Cielo X1 3.0, that would make sense on a lot of days, except for recovery run days where I feel like the Mach 7 would just not be comfy enough. So I think I'm actually gonna go with a Bondi and Cielo X1 3.0 2-show rotation. And so given the shoes that are currently in the lineup today, this is how I would stack them up. Those are my thoughts on the Hoka lineup as of spring 2026. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about any of the shoes that I talked about today, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?